Okay, so a couple of days ago there was a Nintendo Direct, and we finally got another look at Splatoon 3. There's actually a lot of new stuff revealed, and I thought it would be fun to make a video about it. Plenty of people have already done analysis videos on the multiplayer section of the trailer, so this time I want to talk less about gameplay and more about story. Specifically, I want to talk about what's going on in the single player for this game, which is titled Return of the Mammalians. This is a pretty weird direction for them to take the story. Not that it was ever not weird, but you know, now there's hairy octopuses, and I don't really know if I like what's going on here, but this does raise some really interesting questions regarding the lore of the game, and possibly even gives us some answers. Splatoon 2's Salmon Run is often brought up when discussing Splatoon lore because there's a lot we don't know. Salmon Run is built with this air of mystery in mind, and there's a lot of stuff that's intentionally left unanswered. But ever since the introduction of Little Buddy, the small fry companion we see trailing behind the new player character, everyone has been trying to figure out how this will all come together in Splatoon 3's story. Salmon Run has a surprising amount of its own lore, much of which could become more relevant in Splatoon 3. Specifically, the stage Ruins of Ark Polaris has some really interesting details and lots of environmental storytelling to take in. The most obvious of these details is the giant space shuttle that we can see in the background, crashed into the ocean. There have been many theories surrounding the shuttle and its history. Many have speculated that it was a failed attempt by humans to escape the planet during the giant flood that destroyed humanity. And for a while, this seemed to make the most sense. It's called an ark, possibly a reference to the story of Noah's Ark, where a ship was used to survive a great flood. We can also see some other strange features around the map, including what I believe is the only diegetic instance of human, in this case English, text in the series. And it's not just any text, it warns about the presence of bears. In addition, bear-like footprints can be found on this stage near the shore. Now, the obvious connection one might make is that the bear is Mr. Grizz. Mr. Grizz is only ever seen talking to us through a wooden bear statue, and bears eat salmon, so maybe he literally is just a bear. However, this doesn't necessarily have to be the case. Many have speculated that Grizz is either an inkling, octoling, or equivalent species, or that he's simply an AI, which was possibly hinted at in a developer interview. If you're interested, the channel Rassicus has a comprehensive video detailing pretty much all of the current theories about who Mr. Grizz could be. It's really well done, and I definitely recommend checking out their channel if you're into Splatoon lore stuff. Anyway, many people, including myself, really don't want Mr. Grizz to be an actual bear because it just kinda seems like an obvious and anticlimactic reveal for a character who has always been shrouded in mystery. But now with the reveal that mammals do still exist in some form in the world of Splatoon, it might not be the most outlandish idea. But I actually think this information could further suggest that Grizz isn't the bear referenced by the sign in Salmon Run. In the single-player segment of the trailer, we see images of Judd and Little Judd flash on the screen. These are likely parts of Sunken Scrolls or some equivalent lore-giving interface. It's interesting that the developers would place emphasis onto the two cats. As the only known surviving mammals up to this point, it would make sense for the Judds to get more of a focus with this new story arc, but this may have much greater implications. The details of Judd's past are scattered across the first two games and both of the official art books, so here's a quick summary of all the info. The Professor, who is the same human person who created Tartar, the final boss of Octo Expansion, was the owner of Judd. During the collapse of humanity, the Professor injected Judd with an immortality serum, which is just a thing he had, I guess, and then placed Judd into a cryogenic sleep for roughly 12,000 years. At some point before Judd woke up, a scientist accidentally cloned Judd's cells, and this new biomass eventually became Little Judd. So, we know there was at least one human with the technology to cryogenically preserve life for thousands of years. Up until the most recent trailer, it seemed like Judd was the only instance of this actually happening, but now, that might not be the case. So, what does this all mean? Well, the trailer ends with this dramatic shot of the new agent and their small fry companion looking up at a massive space shuttle. The only instances of mammals appearing in the world of Splatoon, other than the cats, are linked to rockets. This one, and Ark Polaris. With those facts in mind, my belief is that a group of humans plan to preserve the lives of mammals during the Great Flood. They built space shuttles that would take the animals to safety as the world crashed and burned beneath them. Inside the ships, the animals would be placed into cryogenic sleep in order to preserve them for thousands of years. Then, sometime in the far future, the ships would return, and the mammals would be able to prosper on a planet reborn. A futuristic version of the Noah's Ark story. Also pretty much the plot of WALL-E. Anyway, I believe that Ark Polaris was one of these ships. If you look closely, not only is the structure in the distance a space shuttle, but the stage itself is as well. If the entire stage is part of one of these man-made ships designed to carry animals, that might explain why the human text on the sign warns of bears in the area. It isn't describing this area, as in the island where it now resides. It's talking about the part of the spaceship it was once attached to while humans were still alive. But what about the footprints we see on the shore? There supposedly was a bear here at some point, right? Well, at a glance, Ark Polaris does not appear to have been successful. The stage does have ruins in the title, after all. But maybe one of the passengers aboard Arc Polaris was none other than a real mammalian bear, and maybe it survived the crash. At least, for long enough to walk along the shore. Being a bear, it's possible that it could have survived for a while feasting on the salmonids living there, but as there's no evidence that it's still lurking somewhere, and as there's no other land nearby, it's likely that it eventually died. As some have suggested, it's possible that these footprints are merely fossils and not something recently made. That might be the case, but with these ideas in mind, the footprints may not be nearly as old as we once thought. And to be clear, I think this particular bear has nothing to do with Mr. Grizz. I strongly believe that the wooden bear statue is simply used as an icon to portray Grizz as a predator of the salmonids. I do think it's entirely possible Mr. Grizz will have a role in Splatoon 3's single player, but I'm honestly not sure what it might be. Many have pointed out that the sound played at the end of the trailer is very reminiscent of the sound effect that plays when entering Grizzco. And that's definitely very suspicious, but I'll leave those theories to you. So, this might be a huge stretch at this point, but my prediction is that the mammalians will return to planet Earth via the human-built rockets and emerge from their cryogenic sleep. This will then spark the beginning of Splatoon 3's story, as there's some kind of strange interaction between the mammals and the Octarians. This is assuming, of course, that we will see actual mammals and not just weird fuzzy Octotroopers. Based on the title, I think we will, but it's hard to say. I personally hope this is the case, because it could give us more insight on the end of humanity, as well as tie together some loose ends from the previous games. As far as gameplay, it would be nice to finally fight something other than the Octarians, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Just, please don't make us fight Octavio again. Please. Well, that's it for now, and remember, these are just my ideas. I think it would be an interesting way to connect the various parts of previous games, and possibly lead to even more interesting questions about the world of Splatoon. I'd be really interested to hear what other people think, so feel free to leave a comment if you made it this far. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.